We are live here. This is my first live in a while. Thank you for everyone joining us live on LinkedIn, on YouTube, and Twitter. My name is Curt Mercadante. I am the host of the Authority brand. We have an incredible guest for you today. Before I go there, though, listen, if you are interested in building your Authority brand and learning how to expand your Authority brand exposure to the right clients to generate the right leads and more revenue so you can scale that business, build that freedom business to fuel and empower your freedom lifestyle, take out your smartphone right now, type in the number 55678 and text the word, just one word, Youthority, Y-O-U-Thority. Text it, Youthority to 55678. Listen, you're going to get an automated text with a number of free resources, webinars, the link to subscribe to the Authority Brand Podcast, and a link to schedule a strategy call with me. Now, I work with clients, entrepreneurs, business owners, solopreneurs, wannapreneurs, entrepreneurs, you name it, to help them build their Authority brand exposure, which isn't just about vanity metrics and likes and views and all those things you can't deposit at the bank. It's about generating the right leads and more revenue for your business. And on that note, first week in November, I'm launching my next quarterly Authority brand bootcamp. It's all virtual. It's via Zoom. Don't worry. You don't have to socially physical distance, whatever. It's built in to the program. But if you want to do that, text Youthority to 55678. I still have seats open now. Let's build your Authority brand so you can fuel your freedom business. And speaking of freedom businesses, that's what my next guest is all about. Jeremy Ryan Slate is founder of the Create Your Own Life podcast. I mean, if that name doesn't scream freedom, I don't know what does. That podcast studies the highest performers in the world. Jeremy studied literature at Oxford University, so he's much more of a brainiac than I am. He specializes in using podcasting and new media to create celebrity and was ranked #1 in iTunes New and number 78 in the iTunes Top 100. He was also named the #1 podcast to listen to by Inc. magazine in 2019, as well as being named a top influencer by Forbes. After his success in podcasting, Jeremy and his wife, Brielle Slate, founded Command Your Brand Media to help entrepreneurs get their message out by appearing as guests on podcasts. So not only is Jeremy building his own Authority brand using podcasts, he and Brielle are helping others to do the same through Command Your Brand. Jeremy, thank you so much for joining us today.
Yo, what is up, my man? Dude, I'm using the same software you're using, but your intro is way more boom, right in your face. I need to figure out how to do that. That's awesome.
I rehearsed it. Maybe it's because I haven't done a live.
I thought I was going into an Avengers movie, man. I'm like, oh, when does Captain America come out? Oh, there he is.
Oh, you're talking about the music at the beginning and stuff?
Well, not even that. Just
it's right there. Yeah. I like to tinker and play around. I hadn't done it in a while, so I was out of practice. That? Yeah, I just did it on Canva.
Oh, dude, you're like a rock star, man.
Yeah. By the way, Robert Kane joining us live on LinkedIn. He says, nice intro. Thank you, Robert. Frank Wells, woohoo. Yeah, this is my first live in a while. If you follow my podcast or any of my social media, you know that my wife and I, about a month ago, well, we're a little over 4 weeks into it now, sold all our possessions. We consolidated a 4,000 square foot home into a minivan, and we're traveling around. And we got sick of the craziness. And, we're going to travel until we're sick of it, until the world calms down a little bit. But you know what? If other external circumstances aren't allowing you to be free, go where you can be free. Yep. And it's up to you, and you do have a choice. So that's what we're doing now. And if, for those of you listening, you're not seeing this, but go subscribe on YouTube. You see a training room in the back. Very natural to me. I do trainings all the time. However, the Airbnb here we're in the Blue Ridge Mountains doesn't have good Wi-Fi. So I actually come here and rent this. So I'm able to talk to awesome people like Jeremy. Now, Jeremy, before we get into everything, I want to start up front and get this out of the way.
Yeah, man.
2 questions. Create Your Own Life podcast.
Yeah.
For those interested, where do they find it and why should they listen?
Well, they should definitely go find it in Apple Podcasts first off, because it's kind of the place where most people listen to us, but they can also get it at jeremyryanslate.com. And why should they listen? Because I interview extraordinary individuals, like the bearded man right in front of me. And we actually just had former New York Yankee and Boston Red Sox Johnny Damon on the show. I've had former CIA Director General David Petraeus on the show. So we interview incredible people to really learn about, what makes them tick and how they think and act to really help other people do the same, man.
And you're available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify.
Just about anywhere you can think of, man. As Stitcher, there's a bunch of totally obscure, weird ones I've almost never heard of. Like we're in Deezer. We're on the top music streaming platform in India. Like we're everywhere, man.
And I love that you have a wide breadth of folks on there. Like you mentioned, Johnny Damon. You have current and former sports stars. Yeah. But you also have, and I loved it, and you've had him on a few times, James Altucher.
Oh, James is awesome.
And he created he created a back and forth with Jerry Seinfeld himself about whether or not New York City is going to recover from these government-imposed lockdowns in the wake of COVID. So please listen to it. It is about creating your own life. You have folks in there talking about health, lifestyle, sports, and how they've built their businesses, but also how they've built the lives that they actually desire. So please tune into that. We're going to put all those links in the show notes. Secondly, Command Your Brand Media. Now, I will say this. I am a happy, a very satisfied, a very fulfilled customer for over a year of Command Your Brand.
Well, so fulfilled, you actually came back around, man. This is your second time around with us.
Exactly. I think over the last year, I came out with my book last year, and the main promotional piece that I used for that book to hit Amazon bestseller status, sell a bunch of books, even help, promote my the event at which you emceed last year in Charleston when the government allowed us to have live events. But Command Your Brand Media. I mean, I think you've booked me at least at this point 35, 40 podcasts, high quality podcasts over the past year. So tell us more about Command Your Brand, what you do, how you help people, and if people are interested. And we'll come back to this, but I want to get it right up front.
Well, I can't take all the credit, first of all, because I know you've been working with the publicist that's actually been with us the longest, and that's Brooke. And I know she's really been doing a great job to kind of help you, with your program. But really what we do is we find out exactly who you need to be in front of, and we get you on the right podcasts that look like that. And the thing I always try to explain to people is there's different lenses people see you through. Let's say you're in e-commerce. Well, not every single show you be on is going to be on the biggest straightforward e-commerce show, but it's going to be different ways people that are in that space would look at you, because that positioning is really, really important, and they see you as more human. So that's really what we help to do is we find the right shows, we book in those shows. We also do a coaching process before that, and you do a whole mock interview before you ever go on a podcast, because we want to make sure not only is this the right audience, not only are you delivering the right way, but we can really make sure this is going to rock and roll for you. So that's really what we do at Command Your Brand.
That's awesome. People want to learn more. Where should they go? We'll put it in the show notes. CommandYourBrand.com. We actually just finally bought the URL in January after we've been using CommandYourBrand.media for a couple of years, because I've been arguing with this guy for about 4 years to sell it to me, and I finally got it at a rate I was willing to pay. That's awesome. That's awesome. Was it under or over $1 million?
Oh, it was under $1 million. I didn't pay that much. I'm not Noah Kagan here, man.
Nice. Now, before we move ahead, I wanted for anyone listening live, and by the way, if you're a subscriber to the podcast and listening to this probably next week in the audio, you can watch some of these live, hopefully more as I get better Wi-Fi. But follow me on LinkedIn, or go to follow Curt Mercadante, just type it into YouTube, or follow me on Twitter. This is live there as well, Curt Mercadante. I do want to give a shout out to some of the folks following us live right now. Frank Wells, entrepreneur from Charleston, South Carolina. Welcome, Frank. Thank you.
Roy Hincamper. One of my favorite places on the planet. I love Charleston.
And you probably met Frank. He was at the festival last year. Roy Hincamper, hello, welcome, fractional CFO entrepreneur from St. Louis, Missouri. We have Evans Caprono, supply chain professional. Hello, Evans. Robert Kane, thank you for your words and nice words about the intro. As you join us, please do not hesitate to ask me or Jeremy a question. Please reserve your tough questions and complaints for Jeremy, though. He'll be happy to take those. But please jump in. Don't just be a lurker. Engage. Life is about being intentional. So hop in with your questions, your comments, your agreements, your disagreements, whatever those are. Now, Jeremy, we talk about authority brand and building your authority. When I say authority brand, what does that mean to you?
You are basically the go-to in your space, and there is no competition. And I think a lot of times people think oh, there's so many people in my space that are doing what I'm doing. Well, if you have the authority, if you have the, the positioning, if you have the right PR, all of those things, you don't really have competition, right? Because there's a certain reason people are coming to you. So when you're the authority, you are the go-to in your space, and you don't really have competition.
When, a lot of times folks talk to, so podcasting is a tool to build your authority.
Sure.
And you use a lot of different tools to build your authority. And I often warn people, don't start with the tools, kind of build that foundation. And I'm sure you've had people who've come in saying, I want to do a podcast, but they actually don't need, they don't know what their message is. They don't know what all that is.
Yep. And that's why I tell them to go on shows first or talk to other people first, because if you don't have a clear message, like starting a podcast is a waste of your time.
It's interesting though, when you appear as a guest on podcasts, and again, we're in agreement, build that foundation, know what your purpose is and all that.
Mm-hmm.
But it's amazing to me that the more I'm a guest on shows, not only do I hone my message and get it better, and it becomes part of my subconscious, right? When I'm talking to people, but I actually learn more when I'm a guest on other people's podcasts. I learn because they're asking questions of me. And sometimes the more I talk through, it's almost like a self-discovery process, isn't it?
Yeah, no, I would agree. And the thing that's interesting too is recently I've been going on a lot of podcasts that I guess like are longer form than I would typically go on, like an hour and a half. I was on that was 2 hours not too long ago. It's like I'm not doing a lot of those, but the things I find is also the conversations you get into in those. You get to work out a lot of things you don't typically get to talk about. Like I was on one where my master's degree is in early Roman Empire propaganda, not a very applicable skill in the world of like getting a job. But we went into some really deep things about like, how, Cesare Borgia thought and how, these different Roman generals thought. And when you look at it, that's not to say that every Roman general out there was virtuous, but you actually learn a lot about looking at that experience once you unpack it with somebody, how you can apply it. So I learn a lot just by having a lot of free-form conversations with people on podcasts.
It's interesting. I think a big part of branding and sales is, your biggest weapon is your 2 ears, not necessarily your 2 lips.
Yeah.
And I study the Tao a lot, the Tao Te Ching, and a lot of it is about being an empty vessel. Mm-hmm. And the more you do that, instead of going in and saying, I'm going to pitch, not just on podcasts, but on sales meetings.
It's not going to work, first of all, if you go and say, I'm going to pitch, because people are like, oh God, it's this guy again.
Right. And those questions they ask, the more you do it, the more, you can learn about yourself, but also you become stronger in terms of a stronger advocate for your own product, service, whatever it is, and learning. Yeah. Listen, other people have questions. If this host has a question, odds are there's potential clients out there who have the same exact questions.
Yeah. And the thing I found too, and you've probably seen this because you do so much of it, but like it's made me a better speaker because you have to kind of free form and interact and things like that. Whereas a lot of times, I know at least when I first started speaking, my first talk to in like 2012, I had a slideshow ready to go that was 180 slides and everybody was sleeping in like the first 3 minutes. But you learn how to kind of engage and you learn how to kind of keep people, going with your story flow and stuff like that. So that's been like really, really huge in that way. Is like it's made me a better speaker. It's even made me a better conversationalist, I guess, in personal conversations.
That's incredible. I want to go back to a little bit to your background.
Sure.
And first of all, we should do an entire separate piece on Roman Empire propaganda and compare it to what's going on today.
Dude, it is like insane. Like, so I read this like 15 years ago. I read this like very tiny, not very widely circulated piece called Augustus at Actium by Father Cuthbert Laity, who is a Jesuit priest. And one of the first things that Augustus did after he beat Mark Antony at the Battle of Actium, which is what led him to being emperor, was he actually went and kneeled before the body of Alexander the Great and venerated that, and then brought back Alexander's chest plate with him to Rome. And that was one of the first things that he set up because he saw the positioning. People already think Alexander is divine, so I need to convince them I am now Alexander. So he spent the next 75 years of his life convincing people it was Alexander the Great. It worked. And then every Roman emperor after that was like, that's the PR plan I need to be using. And that's basically how the propaganda for the next 500 years worked.
It is amazing. So you study Roman history,
mm-hmm.
And so many things are going through my head in terms of what's been going on. Speaking of propaganda over the last at least 24 hours and censorship
Sure.
and other things, but I digress. What led you on the path you're on today? I mean, I know we've spoken about this before, but Oxford University, mm-hmm. Roman history, powerlifting, right? And now you're in media, public relations, helping people build their brand.
Yeah.
What happened there during that trajectory?
So it's kind of weird because it's like it was always curiosity. Like I didn't study those things early on because I thought I was going to get a job, which I don't recommend to people. Like have an idea of like where you want to take it. But I studied a lot of those things because of curiosity. But then when I was 24, my mom ended up having a really bad stroke, and that was actually like a huge pattern interrupt for me. You know what I mean? Like it was kind of like, you're kind of going along, going on this, you're teaching, you're not really happy teaching. I had this massive pattern interrupt where we almost lose my mom, and it kind of like made me just question everything. So then I was trying to figure out, okay, well, how do you make a go at like starting a business? I knew nothing about it. So I got into network marketing was kind of the first thing I did. And I alienated a lot of friends. I made a little bit of money and lost a lot more. And it was kind of the first thing to get me started. But then I went through a number of different things, selling life insurance, which I was actually damn good at. But I felt like a mobster. Pre Rudy Giuliani in New York City, sitting down with people. So I felt kind of weird doing that. I was really great at it. I made some money doing that, but I went from there to then private labeling and selling products on Amazon. And I get my product for $1 promo code on my listing, lost everything in about 10 minutes. And I had failed at so many things. I went back to what I liked, and that was curiosity. So I started a podcast and just got a part-time job working at a friend's marketing firm, building websites. So the bills were paid. That was fine. But I went back to curiosity, and that's always kind of been that thing, like learning about things, my interest in things. And it's weird because I think you have that pattern interrupt, right? And you kind of go off looking for something, and you kind of realize it's been there all along. You just kind of stopped exploring it.
You talked about that curiosity, and it's amazing how, we come out of the womb, right? And we're curious, and we have that sense of exploration.
Yeah.
And somewhere along the way, it's probably early school, maybe it's parents, teachers, whatever. It's like beaten out of us, right? We're told no like 1,500 times a week or whatever the crazy statistic is. But that
or we put our kids on drugs or something like that,
Right. If they are curious, that means they have a disorder. And so it's go on a drug, sit in the corner, shut your mouth, and that's it. And so we drain the curiosity out. But when you come to be an adult and you start rediscovering that curiosity can breed and create, well, not create, but empower and fuel creativity, right? Because asking those questions in and of itself demands answers. And so you start looking for those answers like you did. Listen, you said you failed. I think what you did is you learned what didn't work, but 100%. That curiosity helped you create what you've created now.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think as well, like I think a lot of people have this weird view of failure just because of how society looks at it as well. Like each one of those things I did that didn't work, dude, I use skills that I learned in every one of those things, to this day, like how to run a meeting. Like I can cold call till there's no tomorrow, and I'm not going to feel bad about what the person on the other side of the phone says to me. A lot of people are like, oh my God, but like there's skills you're going to learn in every single one of those things. And I think that's also another thing of how you approach things. Like approach things for what can I learn from this, not God, I hate this. You know what I mean?
Right. Absolutely. By the way, speaking of sales, so Frank Wells, wonderful entrepreneur in Charleston, South Carolina, by the way, who has created an incredible healthcare model, Holy City Med. I mean, he's got for small businesses, these payment plans. And he and I had a discussion about it. I said, is it too good to be true? And he said, no, but that's an entire, and Jeremy, I know you and I agree on a lot of the scamming that goes on in the healthcare. Frank cuts through it, and his mission is to help people. But Frank asks, so much sales training is focused on the pain funnel. Does podcasting focus more on features and benefits, something else?
Well, I think to do it the right way, the focus should be service. Because as a guest, if you're showing up to serve the audience, you're going to do really well. If you're a host showing up to serve the audience and serve the people, you're going to do well. So I would say it's not really focused on benefits and features, but more on service. And if you can figure out how to serve those people, because if it's focused on you, nobody's going to listen to you unless you're already, already super famous and full of yourself already. Or like it has to be about the people there, and it has to be a reason for them to be part of it. So if there's a reason they're engaging with you, I would say that's the real focus. It's a service-oriented medium. And that's really the biggest thing is if you want to be great at it, man, serve the audience, not yourself. And you're going to find out it's actually going to serve you in the long run.
It's with my clients, I often say that no one gives a shit about you, your bells, your whistles, your features, your products, any of that. But often when we first meet a potential customer, we do what I call verbally vomit all over them. We want to show them how smart we are, our background. We're going to differentiate ourselves from our
Oh,
customers.
dude, I've done network marketing. I have vomited on everyone. But go ahead.
And you want to show them what they need. I know what you need. Well, what you think they need might be very different from what they want. And in the end, like you said, if you can serve, and in the end, if I think the definition of a business should be making a positive impact on the lives of other people. If you sell bowling balls, guess what? You're making a positive impact on the lives of someone else. High-end consulting. I mean, Frank's got, medical practices. Through what you do, you're helping me build my business. You're making a positive impact on what I do. And when you go into branding and sales, and podcasting is no different, with that mindset, not only does it help you get out of bed each day, but it also keeps you from verbally vomiting, turning customers off. And instead of going, how am I going to do the slick pitch and sell?
Yeah.
It's how am I going to meet their needs?
Yeah.
Or their wants, which aren't the same thing.
Well, you know what's really interesting? It's funny you mentioned bowling balls. I think people look at that a lot of times and they think like, oh gosh, yeah, there's nothing special about that. So my dad used to be a semi-pro bowler. He was very darn good. His lifetime average is like in the 290s, which is really high for bowling. But do you know somebody that's a really good like servicer of bowling balls, like they have special angles they cut the holes at so that when you throw it straight, it actually hooks and stuff like that. So like not even that, man, it's how you're servicing somebody there, because there's a lot of things you're paying attention to, like even fitting somebody for golf clubs. Like there's so many particular things that when you're really good at that and working in your area of genius, you're still figuring out how to service that person. So I think anything you're doing is about service if you're figuring out how is the end user going to use this and really succeed with this.
So people come to you and they ask for advice. Now I know Command Your Brand doesn't help people edit and launch your podcasts. Although
we have some courses around that.
Yeah, Merck Enterprises will help. We've launched 4 podcasts for clients in the past 2 months. You help book them on there, but I'm sure you get it. Like you said, you have a course. You have a lot of people who probably ask you, I want to do this. I want to start a podcast. When someone comes to you and says, I'm thinking of starting a podcast, I want to start a podcast, do you have any words of advice? What do you say to them?
It usually comes at me from a different way, man. Like they're like, so I'd like 15 minutes to pick your brain about everything you know about podcasting. I'm not going to pay you. So I developed a course. No, I'm not going to buy that. I'd like to pick your brain for 15 minutes. So anyway, I digress. The thing I would say is, really focus on, what is your differentiating thing that you're doing this for? Because I think, like we're talking about authority brands here, right? Yeah. There's not many people out there talking about authority brands. This is a very different and very interesting way to approach this. And you've taken a lot of iterations to get here. A lot of people look at this and they're like, I'm going to recreate Entrepreneur on Fire and we're going to interview interesting entrepreneurs and everybody's going to listen to me. They're not, because you're doing the exact same thing as 50 other people. What is uniquely different about your own message? And that's why, we mentioned, whether it's doing more speaking, whether it's going on more podcasts, whether it's, like really working out what that message is. If you're not quite sure and you're going to start this to kind of work around a little bit, then don't, out of the gate, don't think you're going to make a huge show, but that's fine. Be okay with working it out. But you have to work on what is that unique and differentiating message, or there's just really no point, man. Like you're not going to go anywhere and you're going to quit by 20 episodes.
Do you get a lot of people, because I get a number of people asking me, they launch a podcast, they're in a day job and they're launching a podcast as a business, but the only way they look at making money off the podcast is sponsorships.
Yeah.
And can you speak to that a bit in terms of the percentage of, and hey, I'm all about dreaming big, but I'm also about being realistically abundant in terms of the amount of podcasts that are making money in a true business just off sponsorships.
Yeah. Well, I'll say this, man, like 99% of podcasts don't make anywhere near Joe Rogan money or Entrepreneur on Fire money or anything like that. It's really about like this being the front piece and your PR vehicle to create trust for something else you're doing, whether it be, creating leads for your business, whether it be creating more speaking opportunities for you. If you're just starting this as a business, it's not a great idea. It honestly isn't a great idea because there's just not many people that are going to get the numbers to get advertising money. Because here's the thing people don't understand, right? So, and you get this because you've been in media a long time, but podcasting advertising is set up on an old model, which is what they've done on radio and a lot of stuff where it's called CPM, or cost per mil, which mil is Latin for 1,000. So for every 1,000 downloads, you get a dollar amount. And that dollar amount's like $15. So for every 1,000 downloads, you get $15. The average podcast, the top 5% of podcasts get 100 or more downloads an episode. Oh, so like, if you're looking at it and you're not getting 1,000 downloads and they're getting an ad placement for free, then you're not making money anyway. So you need to figure out, how can I use this to promote everything else I'm doing? And the thing I think people don't understand either is, like, even if you're getting in front of 100 people, but those are the right 100 people, it could be very beneficial for you too. Like, what affiliate offers are you going to work with? We've done very well with Audible's affiliate offer, where we give away books to our audience. I'm currently reading blah, blah, blah. You should go check that out for free, courtesy of Audible, by going to blah, blah, blah. Like, that's a great way you can do it. And you may have a smaller audience, but you can still make money with that. But really, your podcast should be a promotion for something else you're doing, whether it be coaching, whether it be, your C-suite style business, whatever it may be. Like, it should be the front piece.
And there's so many different ways I've learned that people, I mean, I'm sure that you get through your, Create Your Own Life podcast, that you bring people in to command your brand, that work with you, probably guests as well as people, as clients or people who listen. I know someone who is a guest on other podcasts and very frequently gets the podcast host as his clients because he wows them with what they're doing.
We had a client like that who's in the real estate marketing space, and he made so much money off just talking to hosts.
Right? It's amazing. I use a lot of my podcast episodes actually as my next boot camp starts in November. We use it as kind of onboarding. Every week we get them ready. Hey, listen to this episode. It's going to help you get ready for the boot camp. So there's so many different ways, but it's like when I wrote my book and I went to Scribe Media, have you had JT on your show? Do you know JT?
Oh, shout out to JV. JV is a legend. Or JT is a legend, man.
JT, yeah, Javon, and by the way, he's got a great piece. I don't know if you saw it this week about his name.
I really appreciated that, by the way, because now he's actually going by Javon again with JT and quotation marks in between the name.
It's amazing, and he talked. I'm paraphrasing him, but he said he reclaimed his name because corporate America said it was too quote unquote black. Mm-hmm. Anyways, one of the things that Scribe told me when I started, they said, "Why do you want to write a book?" And they said, "You don't." And I said, "Well, thought leadership, authority branding, and at least." They said, "You don't know how many people we have come in who want to write a book because they want to make $1 million from selling their business book." And they're like, now this is the company that published, by the way, David Goggins' book, which if it wasn't for Michelle Obama, he would have been number one nationally or worldwide. But they said, don't go into it wanting to do that. Even most best-selling authors didn't expect to be best-selling authors when they started it.
Well, you don't write a book to make money off the book. You write a book for what it's going to do for you, whether it's more stages, whether it's higher media type. Like for me, we're currently in a process, and our pre-launch starts on Monday for my book Extraordinary, which is based on the extraordinary individuals I've interviewed. And, I'm not doing it because I'm going to try and make a lot of money off the book. I'm kind of doing it because I want to get more higher level in mainstream media, which is what that's going to help me do, because it's going to help me get a lot of those different placements.
Roy Hincamper asks, what are the 1 or 2 key pitfalls to avoid in podcasting or being a guest on podcasts?
1 or 2 key pitfalls to avoid in podcasts. Well, so those are 2 different questions. So let's start with part 1. In podcasting, like I said, if you're not differentiating, be willing to work it out or just don't do it. Like, there needs to be something different and unique about you, because people that are experts have something different to say. Number 2 about that is you don't have to go crazy. Like, this is like a full like studio setup with a mixer and everything like that, but you don't have to have that, but at least have a decent mic. Like, I know you have a cool headset mic on right now. My first podcast, dude, was me with no headphones or anything, and just me talking on my MacBook. So it sounded like those Charlie Brown episodes, like wah, 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 wah. Like, it was so bad. So like, just have good enough audio, because the thing is you're really, your first barrier to people wanting to listen to you is actually listenability. It's a simple thing, but like, if it sounds like nails on a chalkboard, people aren't going to listen. And that's really, 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 really important. So I would say that would be a main pitfall to podcasting. And also, we kind of already covered it, but like, don't do this just to make advertising money. Like, really don't do this just to make advertising money, because you're not going to last very long. And the guest side, I would say, we kind of talked already about showing up to provide value, but I'm going to tell you what not to do. So I know, Curt, you just asked me a question, but on my YouTube video, you can actually find out more about that. So people can check out my YouTube video, blah, 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 blah. Huh? I know, Curt, you just asked me about that, but that's in my book. So go buy my book. So like, don't always point somebody to a resource. Actually answer the question and be there to help people. And I think a lot of times I've had a couple episodes I didn't, publish because every time I asked a question, I just got another resource. And it's like, but then who is this helping? It's helping you because you're trying to get leads. It's fine if you end the episode with a resource because people are always going to say, where can people find you? But like, don't show up just to be the pitch guy. Like, you know what I mean? Like, Billy Mays has since passed on. We don't need to recreate him, man. Like, we don't need to keep doing that.
It's one thing that you are very good at doing at Command Your Brand is when you, or the ShamWow guy. I think he's still with us, although I think he got arrested for.
He got arrested. He's out of prison now, and he's pitching something else.
Nice.
I think he's pitching like Simon Eyes or something like that.
He's just got to watch what he's buying, right? He was arrested, I think, for soliciting a prostitute. I think. So when you, my mindset just got taken off track there for a second, thinking about the ShamWow guy.
We were talking about pitching.
Yeah. So one of the things that you're very good at Command Your Brand at doing is, especially on the first round, is giving tips when you appear on a podcast and you provide those resources. And one of the key things that I wasn't good at the beginning, and now I'm like, gosh, I got to make sure to do that. But you talk about providing those resources is making sure that you just don't give a random website in many cases, but if you have something very specific. So Joe Peachy, my sales mentor, he uses a link to text authority to 55678. Something very specific, or give a branded URL to go directly to your ebook or free thing versus go to my website and try to find something.
Go to my website, tool around a little bit, get frustrated because of my load time, and leave.
Yeah. Well, especially if you have a name like Curt Mercadante, and at the end I'm like, go to CurtMercadante.com. And so that's why with my book, I had 5 pillars of freedom.
We had a client that his first name is Lance, and he's an awesome guy, but his last name is like this Greek last name. So it was like 37 syllables. I'm like, all right, so I love you, man, but people can't write that. So we're going to buy workwithlance.com. That's exactly what we're going to buy. Like, you need to make it so people can actually get there.
Yeah, right. Well, like you said, you went and got commandyourbrand.com. And you mentioned your upcoming book. And you talk about extraordinary people and extraordinary guests that you've had. Are there any that stick out? How many episodes have you done again of Create Your Own Life?
781, I think, was somewhere around there this week.
So any extraordinary interviews with extraordinary individuals are all extraordinary that really stick out to you?
I feel like I always say it, but Grant Cardone, just because his story is so incredible, but like he was an even more incredible human. Because I think a lot of times you connect with people and they're like, "Oh, I'm so awesome. Let me tell you how awesome I am." Like the first few minutes Grant talked to me, he wanted to know all about me, and that's very rare, I think, in when you talk to somebody, to want to have them to be super interested in you. So that was kind of cool, and also learn a lot about his life. Like, he's been through a lot of adversity to get where he's been, and that's actually like one of the key things that I'm currently writing about, is how adversity is kind of like a thing that allows people to grow to that next level, right? Like, it raises your thermometer. So like, another one that absolutely blew me away was Bedros Keuilian. I don't know if you're familiar with Bedros. But he founded Fit Body Boot Camps, came to the US from Armenia. And the thing he didn't want people to know in high school is that they were actually like eating out of garbage cans to like be able to like, do sustenance. So he's like, you know what, man, I can go longer, further, and harder than anybody because I've been there already. And I think that's what's really, really interesting is, I don't want to pick on Americans, but I feel like a lot of times, like, it's why immigrants do so well here. Like, we've gotten lazy over time, man. Like, we're not willing to take as much. And when I talk to a lot of these high level individuals, like, they will take more than any single person will ever be willing to take and just keep on running, man. Like, I had Anthony Trucks on not too long ago. And I don't know if you're familiar with Anthony, but like, he had this dream of being an NFL player, but he had grown up in the ghetto. His family broke up. He ended up living in a foster care household, which didn't really go great. And then he gets to the NFL, he blows out his shoulder, his whole career's over in like a year. Then he finds out his wife's cheating on him, they get divorced, and then I'm like, dude, like, any single one of those things would have made the normal person quit, and you're still going. Why is that? And I think that's really what inspires me about extraordinary people. Like, dude, they'll just take the hits and keep on going because they know at some point, if they keep showing up, they're going to break through.
And it goes back to, I mean, you talked about some of your failures and learning experiences. I think a lot of those extraordinary people aren't afraid of hard work, knowing what it takes. But they also, once they learn 5 ways that don't work, they finally get the hint and they flow toward the one that does. And there's some people who have failure after failure after failure, but they never adopt that learning mindset. And so they just keep doing it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Instead of, like Thomas Edison said, I just learned 999 ways that don't work. They don't learn from it. And so they do 999 more and then declare defeat and the world is against me.
I feel like we've lost that, especially in my generation, man. Like they've, they kind of had their parents come out of the baby boom where they got some stuff given to them. But then, after that, they gave their kids way too much. So they're helpless. Like, I think sometimes like that ability to have to work for something is so gratifying because of the growth that you create in getting there. And I just think it's something we've started to lose as a society, and it's something that needs to be, continually put back in, because the hard work in itself can be the greatest repayment. Because, like, I always loved painting as a teenager. Like, I painted houses because, like, you can actually physically see the result of what you've done, and it just feels so empowering, even though the work is hard as heck. And I think, like, that is just so important, that work ethic, and also the reward and just a job well done.
It's interesting, and a lot of people will say, well, it's the millennials and the participation trophies. And I can't remember who it was. Maybe it was Ed Milet. I can't remember who said, stop blaming the millennials. We're the ones who gave them the participation trophies.
Exactly.
It's our fault.
Yeah.
But my family, one of our favorite things to do, and we've homeschooled for 14 years. And
we're going to be doing the same.
It's, we love it, and we're very entrepreneurial in why we do it and how we do it. But one of our favorite things to do as a family is sit down and watch Shark Tank together. And it's amazing. If you just had your kids watch Shark Tank day after day and took them out of school, they'd learn creativity, they'd learn math, they'd learn basic business principles, they'd learn how to communicate, and they'd learn what not to do. But, that show's been on, I don't even know, 12 seasons now, 13, I don't even know what it is. But to your point, there are still people, and by the way, they're not all just young millennials. I see this with some 50-year-old entrepreneurs who come in there as well, who they don't communicate their impact. Maybe they even have a whiz-bang pitch, but they have no impact. So it's all flash and nothing. And so they have no impact. There's nothing there. It's like they haven't watched a previous episode of Shark Tank to know exactly the questions that are going to be asked. But in the end, when they don't get a deal, they either break down in tears or anger about, you don't know how hard I've worked. I haven't slept in 2 weeks. I haven't done this and that. And it's just this mentality. It's like, well, that's
great, but what results have you gotten? What have you, like, I don't care how hard you work. What have you done? And that's people like think there's like this trophy for working hard. Like, if you want to keep beating yourself up like a martyr, man, go for it. But what have you produced?
The world just doesn't care. And it's funny how a lot of people say, well, it does care and this and that. And those same people, they wouldn't give a dime to you if you didn't provide them impact, because that's what happens in a free market. But one of the best learning experiences is my 14-year-old daughter here we go again. Someone's crying. And it's not the crying. It's just that they think that they are owed something. And, with that, when you talk about learning and keeping going and being persistent, when you go and ask for podcast guests, it can just be like selling. And it's a great tool to learn how to be persistent, because, hey, that person won't want to be on my show because you mentioned Grant Cardone. Can you tell everyone, the listeners, the story? Because I recall there was a bit of persistence and you were getting no's until you actually ran into him and went up to him and asked him, and you weren't afraid of asking him. Can you tell that story? Because I think it's great, not only from a podcasting point of view, but just from sheer persistence.
So I had pitched him like 7 times over like 2 years, and it was always like, no. And the final response, you'll love this, the final response from his team was, you got a 10x it. And I was like, so you want me to get 200,000 downloads an episode? Like, wow, that's a lot. I was like, okay, cool. So I was working at a fundraiser, and I'm like hanging off some scaffolding, and my wife goes, you're never going to believe who's out here. She's like, get your butt over here now. And I was like, I was a total mess. So I ran over here and I met Grant, and I was like, and as I said, he like was asking me all about me. And I'm like, wow, that's like, people never like, I don't know. I've met a lot of famous people, and the first thing they do is ask you about you, which is, it's just super cool, because it makes you feel like, accepted, and it makes you feel important and stuff like that. I was like, oh, I have, what do you do? I have a podcast. He goes, oh, cool, I'd like to do that. I'm like, you would? I was told you wouldn't. So then, we ended up he's like, well, you're going to email this person, you're going to tell them blah, 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 and you're going to tell them Grant. So we're doing it. I'm like, okay, cool. So we ended up getting the podcast, and it was incredible. And it was also incredible, like how, willing he was to share the stuff after too. Cause it also really helped like the show's growth too.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah. Be persistent. Go and ask. Listen, there's some people who are just going to say no and keep going after them. There's some people I've heard like to test you. I think a number of people have told me that Seth Godin likes to kind of test you and see if you're going to come back to him time and again.
He was the first person I pitched, and he goes, when you get to 400, let me know. So when I got to like 390, I was like, hey, Seth, we're almost at 400. He's like, great, I'll book it. I'm like, okay, cool.
See, there you go. And you just never know. Now, I do want to stop here and pause and give a shout out. We have Simon John Garcia Field commenting here with us. Thank you for joining us. He talks about Shark Tank, how he loves it. Rob Statham, the wine and beer expert up in Canada, north of the border. Podcasts are a great way to enhance your brand. It certainly helped me immensely. Thank you all for joining. Frank Wells, love Shark Tank with my kids. Yeah, it is such a wonderful show. Now let's shift gears here a little bit from starting your own podcast to appearing as a guest on other people's podcasts. They're kind of continuing that theme of persistence and learning and not being afraid. There's probably a lot of people who sit here and think, hey, we're going to get you to be a guest on podcast to build your authority brand. And they think, who's going to want me on? It's that imposter syndrome. Who's going to want to hear from me? I have nothing to say. It's the same thing you hear when people talk about posting on social media, et cetera. What do you say to someone who says, what do I have to say? Who wants to hear from little old me?
Wow. I guess that's the direct opposite of the guy that's like, I'm awesome and I should be on everything. Why am I not? I've met that guy. He's not very nice. So to the person that's an imposter, like, here's what I would say. Like, start small. Like, start with shows that are less than 20 episodes, less than 20 reviews. Because, those shows are, number one, that the hosts aren't going to have, I don't want to be offensive, but they're not going to have as tight of chops yet. Like, you know what I mean? They need to kind of work on it a little bit and kind of work up their way as a host. So it's going to be a learning experience for both of you. And that's kind of a great place to get like more used to your message, more used to who you're talking to and how you're talking to them. And that's really going to, help you work things out. So that's really would be my recommendation, is just start small and build yourself up. And the more of those you get under your belt, the more confident you get, the more able you get to talk, the more you can kind of see the value you have to offer. And you're going to find the more you do that, the more clarity you get in your message. That's one of the biggest things I've gotten from clients that are newer, is when they get on like smaller shows and just, talk to people, like, it helps them to get more clarity in their message. So when they really do go on those bigger shows, they're ready to rock and roll, man.
Can you tell us some, and I know you have some success stories of clients that you've gotten booked who have ended up getting some deals, winning business, and building their. Yeah. I've talked about me. I fueled my bestseller, my Amazon bestseller. We've just started another program here in terms of helping me get new clients to help them build their authority brand. But I know you have some incredible case studies of people that you've helped.
So we had a client that actually was on Elena Cardone's podcast. It did really well, and they actually ended up working with those guys, which was really, really awesome, that they helped them with their LinkedIn stuff. So that was kind of cool. We had another client that I had mentioned previously in the real estate space that I can't take credit for everything because the guy's a genius, but he made about $100,000 directly off of shows. And then in a lot of the other stuff he did, he made another $400,000. So he made about $500,000 in, total revenue off of shows he'd been on. Another client we did a book launch for, we helped him sell somewhere between 4,500 and 5,000 books on his launch, which was really, really incredible. So we've done a lot of, incredible stuff and really helping our clients get out there and get noticed.
And it's I mean, there's literally, and you have some podcast, or you have some statistics, I know, but there's a podcast for literally every niche thinkable, isn't there? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy, dude. Like, we had a client once that, like, what she would do is, she was an interior designer that, like, I guess her parents got a little bit older and she kind of saw how she could use those skills in a different place. So what she actually did is she helped people redesign their homes when they got older, so they didn't like get hurt and stuff like that, but they still like were aesthetically pleasing. And we actually found like shows like that. We haven't, I guess, booked that area in a while, just because we haven't had a client in that area. So we have a list now called the geriatric list. But like, that's actually, believe it or not, like, that was a really tight and different targeting, and we were able to do it.
I'm shifting gears here a little bit, but Is there a common theme between, so you've built a successful podcast, successful business. You've had some businesses that weren't so successful, and you learned again what works, what doesn't work. But you've also interviewed these extraordinary people, some of whom are building businesses, some of whom, oh gosh, what's his name? The Australian pitcher who talked about his persistence and his journey to becoming a sportscaster.
Oh, Ryan Roland Smith.
Oh, it was awesome.
Him and I have a podcast coming up together. I'm going on his show. He's an awesome dude.
That was an incredible. I haven't been listening to podcasts as much here because I can't listen. I usually walk and listen. Sure. And on the mountains, I'm going to get hit by a car because you turn the thing. But so I got to get back to it next week when we.
You got to paint that beard fluorescent orange, man. The cars will see you then.
Exactly. Is there a common theme through your own business, through guests you've had, and also some of your clients that you've had, that you've learned in terms of creating your own life? And that includes business and includes whatever the relationships, the self-care. Is there one common theme that you've learned through your experience and theirs?
It's a super simple one, man, but it's persistence. It's the ability to keep going, keep showing up, keep doing, and keep arriving at that place. Because so many people quit so easily. It's kind of a big theme of what we've been talking about today. People give up. They want a participation trophy. They want something else. They want to, get noticed for all the hard work they've done that hasn't gone anywhere. But they're gonna, whether it's clients or whether it's people I've interviewed, the biggest thing has been that persistence and that willingness to show up, but also at that willingness to learn from what they've persisted at. Right, like. I was a dumb wrestler in school. So like, I think sometimes in wrestling, we thought if you ran into the wall 25 times, it was going to break on the 26th. I'm going to let you know that wall's going to win every single time. And that's why you need to be persistent, but also learn from that. And I think that's the biggest thing I've learned from whether it's clients or, people I've interviewed.
Now, Create Your Own Life podcast is one of my go-to podcasts to listen to. And I mentioned I usually listen to it on my walk when I'm not, there's some others I listen to. What podcasts, other than Create Your Own Life podcast, what other podcasts do you listen to on a regular basis or do you recommend?
Do I listen to? This is going to be a bad recommendation, man, because like, I don't know. I don't listen to interview shows, which is typically, like what I put people on. So like, okay, what do I listen to? I just finished, I think it's got an episode left that has to come out in the series yet. All American Tiger Woods is really interesting. It's about Tiger Woods' life and career. Bunga Bunga about Silvio Berlusconi and his downfall. That was quite interesting.
Oh, wow.
Hardcore History, Dan Carlin, really, really great show. I'm actually just scrolling through my feed and I listen to a lot of podcasts. Shattered, the Jimmy Hoffa story. Interesting. Wow. I love stories. Supernatural. It's about alien abductions and stuff like that. I have really interesting and weird interests. The Dan Bongino show. So I'm kind of all over the place, man.
Yeah. And you've had Dan on your show recently.
I haven't. We're working on setting it up though. I did actually just meet the guys from Attila's Gym last night that were on Bongino at an event, and we're gonna have a podcast coming up.
You know what? I think I saw a comment for you either on Twitter or Facebook asking him directly to come on the show. And,
it was Dr. Jason was like, hey, he tagged him into it.
Okay, that's what I saw. Well, no, that's wonderful. And a lot of when people ask me for book recommendations, a lot of my books are not business related or anything because I like an escape. And so those are awesome. I'm going to check those out, those series shows. Someone's listening here and they're like, listen, Jeremy's got a course that's going to help me start my own podcast. Or they're like, listen, I need to build my business. I need to build my authority brand and I want to get booked on podcasts. That's the missing piece to building my business. First online course, where do they go? How do they get it?
You're asking for online course for building a podcast?
Yeah, you mentioned you had a course.
Yeah. So they can go over to commandyourbrand.com, go to the courses tab, and they can kind of see our podcast launch courses there. We had bought a vanity URL, but I don't remember it off the top of my head. So this is a moment when I am like screwing up on that, but they can definitely go over to the courses tab on Command Your Brand and they'll see it. And that's going to help them kind of if they're in a do-it-yourself mode.
And we're going to add it to the show notes. And here, when we get off, we'll add it to the social feed here. And people want to get booked on podcasts. They want Command Your Brand to help them command their brand. You already mentioned the website. Any other places they should go?
Well, so actually, we've talked a lot about like PR and media. And I don't want people to make the same mistakes I've had and kind of, trial by fire, which can be a little hard sometimes. So I actually put together a really great piece for them that they can kind of learn how to not make those same mistakes, called the 7 Reasons You're Not Getting Booked in Your Favorite Podcasts. And it goes through a lot of great information about like how to locate the right shows, how to really get booked in the right places. And they can do that over at commandyourbrand.com/7reasons, and the word 7 or the number 7 will work for that. Jeremy
Ryan Slate, I appreciate you, not just for coming on today, but Julie and I you were so excited when you came to Charleston last year. You were an awesome MC, but getting to know you, getting to know Brielle, we have a lot of similarities in world outlook, philosophical, political. Maybe we'll have to do a whole separate show on that, and Roman propaganda and how it compares to today. But Jeremy, thank you for doing what you do. Thank you for making a positive impact on other people's lives with Command Your Brand and your podcast, Create Your Own Life. Thank you for coming on the show today.
Absolutely. Can I answer one of your YouTube commenters before we jump off here?
Yeah, absolutely.
So we have You Do It on YouTube.
I just saw that. Yeah.
He's talking about Attila's gym. He says, my son lists that gym. They're being hit with $300,000 fines. So there was a thing in the news about that this morning, actually. Governor Murphy is now trying to take possession of all their gym equipment to cover their fines. So I'm kind of watching this to see where this goes.
I've been thinking about doing a whole show on the powerful branding that governments do. Last year, I had a guy on, Andrew, is it Harrison? The Nomad Capitalist. And he helps people who want to get the hell out of the country and who are sick of paying taxes. And he teaches you how to got like 50 passports. And his tagline is, go where you're treated best. And one of the things he said in the podcast, what no one brands as effectively or powerfully as like governments, religions, and some other pieces, and it really is, it's that branding of fear. We've seen it over the last 6 months or so, but it's amazing that, we're here in the South, and people in the North, we have family up in the North, they're getting just a completely different filter than we are. We don't watch the news, first of all, but they're getting a filter as if here in the South, and we're in Georgia now, we were in Charleston, like we're piling bodies in the streets. And we're going to visit in Illinois. They just have no concept that other people are going about their lives and not dying. And I know people are going to comment, people are going to say, well, Curt, you're just this and that. That's fine. But if you're here on the ground and seeing what's happening here, people are living. Mm-hmm. And it's just a completely different story than you're seeing, say, in a Chicago or, my goodness, in New Jersey. I mean, I've been able to go to the gym since June. And you know what? People who are there are humans with free choice and free will, and we're going there. And we're exercising not only our right to choose, my body, my choice, right? But we're also, we're exercising. We're being healthy. We're not getting stuck inside with no sunlight, no vitamin D.
Which is a really good idea to do. And what's interesting here. Our gym, the gym I go to, I don't go to Attila's, but I do like what those guys have been trying to do. My gym they have 2 locations, so it's kind of like a small, mom and pop shop, super cool guys. But they were closed for a couple weeks, and then in May, they connected with a congressman out in Arizona, I believe, and they found an obscure law from like 100 years ago. And you should read the wording on this thing because it sounds like it was written by somebody that was very eloquent, and we just don't talk like that anymore. But basically, they closed their LLC and they reformed as a private membership association where we have we actually choose the rules and stuff of the gym. And now because it's set up that way, the government can't close them. So I've been working on it since May, man. It's been great. It's called the PMA.
It's amazing. And it goes back to that. You can be a victim or you can choose to do it. And listen, if a private business puts up a sign and says whatever they want to say, I respect private property rights, and that's their right to do it.
Yep.
But when a government says you got to wear something walking down the street, nope. I actually on the Facebook page of the Charleston City government, I asked if I could prepay my fines. And some people might accuse me of being a killer and whatever, but my point is, listen, I avoid it. Yep. And I have a philosophy that's very simple. Don't be an asshole. And so my philosophy is, listen, I'm not going to go near you. And you know what? You have a responsibility not to come near me.
Yeah.
And so we came up to the North Georgia mountains where we're free. We're not complaining. We're not going after people. We're not trying to we're not going into private entities and screaming at people. It's a little bit of a digression, but you know what? That's who I am. That's my brand. And I don't give a shit if you think otherwise.
Yep.
So, all right. Well, thank you everyone for joining. Thank you, Jeremy, for coming on here. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me, man.
Everyone go subscribe, Create Your Own Life podcast, wherever you listen to podcasts, Command Your Brand Media. We're going to put all the links in the show notes. Jeremy, thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks for having me, man.
For listening.